Hello, Symposiast. What if I told you that the idea of the word wilt and the Abbey of Thelema and the name Thelemite doesn't come from Crowley, and that Crowley has actually taken inspiration from somebody else, a 16th century author named François Rabelais? Well, if you're interested in knowing more, stay tuned because you're just about to watch a talk that I gave. In fact, it was the keynote talk at the International Thelemic Symposium in Oxford in September 2024, where I talk just about this. So I hope that you stay tuned and you let me know in the comments what you think about it. And I will also leave links in the info box about the Thelemic Symposium in case you want to look it up. And as always, as you know, I'm an academic specializing in everything esoteric. And if you like my project of delivering online and free-for-all academic scholarship and research and analysis on topics in esotericism, I would really appreciate it if you consider supporting my work with donations on PayPal, joining my Patreon community, my coffee, super thanking me in the comments, or looking up my services at drangelapuca.com. You can get tutoring sessions with me. You can also get private lectures. You can buy my courses. There's plenty of stuff on my website, so I definitely recommend checking it out. And also sign up for my newsletter. That's free, and it gives you access to pictures, information, and thoughts and ponderings from me that are uncensored because on social media I always have to be careful. So sign up for my newsletter. You find all these links in the info box, bio, cards everywhere, and enjoy the talk. Hope that you like it. Bye for now, and stay tuned for the academic fun.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm Dr. Angela Puca. I'm a religious studies PhD and a university lecturer, as was just mentioned. So today we are going to talk about from Thelem to Thelema. That would be the correct Greek pronunciation, but I will use the anglicized Thelema because I know that that's what people are most familiar with. And so we will try and trace the path from Rabelais to Crowley. So this is what we are going to talk about today. So today we embark on a journey through the intricate philosophical and aesthetic lineage that links François Rabelais' monumental work, which is Gargantua and Pantagruel, to Aleister Crowley's Thelemic doctrine. And the central thesis that I will propose in my talk is that Crowley's defining maxim, do what thou wilt, was profoundly influenced by Rabelais' depiction of the Abbey of Thélème, and its emblematic motto, fais ce que voudras, which is translated as do what you will. So François Rabelais is a towering figure in the French Renaissance and was a 16th century writer, physician, and humanist scholar, renowned for his wit, linguistic playfulness, and his critique of social, political, and religious norms of his time. His most famous work, Gargantua and Pantagruel, is a series of satirical novels that blend farce, fantasy, and intellectual discourse. Written in a period marked by religious conflict and the beginnings of the Reformation, Rabelais' writing stands out for its humanist values, celebration of knowledge, and critique of dogmatism. So within this larger work, particularly in the first book, Gargantua, Rabelais introduces the Abbey of Thélème, which is an imagined utopian community that defies the conventional norms of monastic life. Unlike traditional monastic orders, where strict rules govern daily existence, the Abbey of Thélème is governed by a single rule, fais ce que voudras, which is do what you will. This principle emphasizes the inherent goodness of human nature and the belief that individuals, if left to their own devices, and freed from oppressive structures, will naturally pursue virtue, wisdom, and harmony. Rabelais uses the abbey as a symbol of an ideal society that is based on freedom, personal ideals that were, and also autonomy, and the pursuit of knowledge, which really reflects the humanist ideals that were gaining prominence during the Renaissance. This vision of a society that is rooted in personal freedom and the pursuit of one's true desires later captivated Aleister Crowley, a significant figure that we all know here in the modern occult revival and the founder of the religious philosophy of Thelema or Thelema. In the early 20th century, Crowley formulated Thelema, a spiritual system that is centered on the notion of discovering and enacting one's true will. At its core is the axiom, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," which closely echoes Rabelais' motto in the Abbey of Thélème. Crowley saw in Rabelais' work a precursor to his own ideas on spiritual freedom and individual sovereignty. Adapting and expanding upon these Renaissance concepts to fit his own esoteric framework. In this presentation, we will delve into the contents and themes of Gargantua and focus particularly on the Abbey of Thélème and its philosophical implications within the context of Rabelais' humanist thought. We will then trace the transmission of these ideas to Crowley, examining how Thelema as a doctrine mirrors and develops the principles set forth in Rabelais' fictional Utopia. Through this comparative analysis, we will try, hopefully, to illuminate the enduring impact of Rabelais' work on modern esoteric traditions, and also showcase how a 16th century vision of an ideal society continues to resonate within contemporary spiritual and philosophical discourses. Let's look a bit about the context of the book. Gargantua and Pantagruel is a series of 5 books written by François Rabelais between 1532 and 1564. The novels are set against the backdrop of the French Renaissance, a period marked by significant social, religious, and cultural changes. This era witnessed the rise of humanism, a movement that emphasized the value of human potential and individual freedom. And there is often in contrast to the medieval worldview that was dominated by the Catholic Church. Rabelais himself was a scholar, a physician, and a former monk. He was well versed in the classics and was influenced by the new humanist ideas of the time. His books are characterized by their satirical humor, playful language, and the use of bawdy and grotesque elements to critique the religious and political authorities of his day. The novels challenge the rigid scholasticism, religious dogmatism, and corruption that were rampant in his contemporary institutions. The series chronicles the lives and adventures of 2 giants, Gargantua and his son Pantagruel. The narrative is filled with episodes that are both humorous and fantastical, blending elements of farce, satire, and allegory. Although each book can be read independently, they share common themes and characters. So I will give you a brief overview of this book so that you have a context, even though the one that interests us the most is the first one. So the first book is Gargantua. And this introduces us to the birth and early life of the giant Gargantua, the son of Gargantier and Gargamel, which are noble giants living in the medieval France of Rabelais' imagination. Gargantua is born after an incredibly long pregnancy and a comical delivery in which his mother gives birth to him through her ear. As a child, Gargantua is pampered and indulged, leading to a life of ignorance and idleness. Eventually, he is sent to Paris for education, where he undergoes a transformation from a lazy, unlearned youth into a learned and capable leader. The book recounts various humorous and absurd episodes, such as Gargantua's innovative invention of a new method for wiping one's bottom and his re-education under the tutelage of the wise humanist teacher Ponocrates, which sounds sort of Greek. So under Ponocrates' guidance, Gargantua receives a balanced education that combines intellectual pursuits, physical exercise, and moral instructions, which reflects Rabelais' advocacy for a well-rounded and humanist approach to learning. The narrative takes a more serious turn when Picrochel, a neighboring king, invades Gargantua's homeland. In response, Gargantua leads his people to victory over Picrochel's forces, and after the battle, as a reward for Friar John's bravery in defending the vineyard from the enemy, Gargantua establishes the Abbey of Thélème, from French, the Abbey of Thélème. And this utopian community embodies Rabelais' vision of a society that is founded on the principles of personal freedom, knowledge, and the rejection of conventional monastic rules. The Abbey of Thélème is a stark contrast to the existing religious institutions, and it allows its inhabitants to follow their desires, encapsulated in the motto "Fais ce que voudras," do what you will. So this book focuses, this is a second book. I will briefly talk about the other book so that you have a vague sense of the wider context, but then we will go back to the first one. So the second book, Pantagruel, this one focuses on Pantagruel, the son of Gargantua, who grows into a wise and strong giant. Pantagruel embarks on adventures, studies at the University of Paris, and befriends clever Panurge. And the story is filled with satire and humor, critiquing academic and legal institutions while exploring themes of education, wisdom, and curiosity. Then the third book is here we find that Panurge is obsessed with whether to marry, and he consults various authorities without reaching a decision. The book humorously critiques superstition and reliance on authority, promoting reason, skepticism, and personal judgment. In the fourth book, Pantagruel and his companions embark on a sea voyage to seek the oracle of the divine bottle. Along the way, they encounter fantastical islands that satirize human folly, religious hypocrisy, and societal corruption, critiquing contemporary politics and dogmatic beliefs. The final book concludes their quest at the temple of the divine bottle, where the answer, drink, suggests embracing life with curiosity and joy. It continues Rabelais' themes of wisdom, reason, and the critique of human folly. These books blend, as you can see, humor, fantasy, and philosophical thought, critiquing the institutions of Rabelais' time and advocating for human freedom, inquiry, and the joy of learning. So the final book concludes their quest at the temple of the divine bottle, where the answer, drink, suggests embracing life with curiosity and joy. It continues Rabelais' theme of wisdom, reason, and the critique of human folly. So now let's talk about the Abbey of Thélème, or the Abbey of Thélème in Rabelais' Gargantua. So as we mentioned, this is part of the first book. And here François Rabelais introduces us to the Abbey of Thélème, a fictional utopian community that was established by the giant Gargantua. The abbey is built as a reward for his friend, Friar John, who has shown exceptional bravery in battle. This setting serves as a stark contrast to the traditional monastic institutions of the 16th century, which were characterized by strict rules, austerity, and a rigid adherence to religious authority. Rabelais' Abbey of Thélème represents a radical departure from all of that, and it was founded instead on the principle of free will and personal liberty. At the core of the Abbey of Thélème, as we mentioned, is the motto "Fais ce que voudras," which is do what you will. And this simple yet profound phrase encapsulates the essence of the Abbey's philosophy. Unlike the monasteries in Rabelais' time, and we said that he was a former monk as well, where monks and nuns were required to take vows of obedience, poverty, and chastity, the inhabitants of Thélème are encouraged to follow their own desires, instincts, and their passions. In Rabelais' vision, the abbey is a place where individuals are liberated from the constraints of religious dogma and the social expectations. Here, the Thelemites, those who live in the abbey, are free to pursue their interests and inclinations without the burdens of guilt, shame, or fear of moral judgment. This freedom is not portrayed as mere indulgence, but rather as a reflection of a deeper humanist belief in the value of self-determination, personal growth, and the pursuit of knowledge. Rabelais paints the Abbey of Thélème as a place of extraordinary beauty and splendor. The abbey is described as having magnificent architecture surrounded by lush gardens and abundant natural resources. The environment is designed to foster intellectual, artistic, and cultural pursuits, with ample opportunities for its residents to engage in scholarly discussions, philosophical debates, and creative arts, and also leisurely activities. The Thelemites are depicted as idealized figures, noble, well-educated, and refined, embodying the Renaissance ideals of human potential, personal refinement, and the harmonious development of both mind and body. They live in a society that encourages creativity, exploration, and the joy of learning, which starkly contrasts with the rigid and rule-bound life of contemporary monasteries that Rabelais sought to criticize. Through the creation of this idealized community, Rabelais offers a satirical critique of the societal and religious norms of his time. He targets the corruption, hypocrisy, and dogmatism that were prevalent in the Catholic Church and other institutions of his time. The Abbey of Thélème really serves as a counterpoint to all of this, and a counterpoint also to perceived shortcomings of 16th century French society, and suggests that a more enlightened and joyful existence is possible when individuals are freed from the oppressive structures of authority and orthodoxy. Rabelais uses humor and irony to challenge the idea that human beings need strict external controls to be virtuous or moral. Instead, he suggests that when given freedom, people will naturally choose what is good, just, and beautiful. So, at the heart of the Abbey of Thélème is a profound belief in the intrinsic goodness of human nature, clearly. Rabelais presents a vision of humanity that is inherently virtuous, creative, and inclined towards constructive pursuits when not shackled by external constraints. He argues that individuals, when granted freedom, will instinctively seek out paths that are beneficial to themselves and to others. This idea challenges the prevailing views of his time, and probably of our time as well, which often regarded human nature as inherently sinful and in need of strict control by religious or secular authorities. Rabelais instead offers a humanist perspective, celebrating the capacity of individuals to govern themselves and achieve fulfillment through their own free will and innate goodness. This concept of innate human goodness and the importance of personal freedom would later resonate powerfully with Aleister Crowley, which we all know is a 20th century occultist who developed the Thelemic philosophy. Crowley drew heavily on the ideas presented in the Abbey of Thélème, seeing in Rabelais' motto, "Do what you will," a precursor to his own central tenet, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." For Crowley, as for Rabelais, the exercise of free will was a fundamental principle. He adapted this Renaissance vision of human freedom into his own spiritual and esoteric framework, expanding it into a philosophy that emphasized the discovery and fulfillment of one's true will, the unique, authentic purpose each person is meant to pursue. Through the lens of the Abbey of Thélème, we can see how Rabelais' innovative and rebellious ideas about freedom, human potential, and the rejection of arbitrary authority laid the groundwork for later esoteric and philosophical movements, including Crowley's Thelema. The Abbey of Thélème continues to inspire contemporary thought on liberty, human nature, and the pursuit of spiritual intellectual fulfillment. Now, let's talk about the influence, and then later we will also cover the differences between Crowley and Rabelais. So Aleister Crowley, who, as we know, styled himself as the Great Beast 666, was not only a prominent occultist, but also a voracious reader and a passionate student of literature, philosophy, and the esoteric arts. His deep engagement with the works of François Rabelais is evident throughout his writings, where he makes several direct references to the French author and also his literary creations. Crowley's admiration for Rabelais is particularly significant in understanding the philosophical underpinnings of his own doctrine of Thelema, which mirrors many of the ideas presented in Rabelais' satirical and humanist texts. In Crowley's autobiographical work, The Confessions of Aleister Crowley, he recounts his early encounter with Rabelais' novels, describing how he read Rabelais with the utmost relish and recognized in him a kindred spirit. Crowley found inspiration in Rabelais' works and went on to establish his own Abbey of Thelema in Cefalù, Italy, during the early 1920s. In 1926, he began writing the Antecedents of Thelema to highlight the philosophical connections with Rabelais' idea, but the work was never completed. Crowley's affinity for Rabelais went beyond mere appreciation. He saw in Rabelais a writer who, like himself, challenged the established norms and conventions of his time with boldness, wit, and a defiant sense of freedom. This connection between the two really laid the groundwork for Crowley's later adoption of the Thelemic motto, "Do what thou wilt," which draws quite clearly from the motto of Rabelais' fictional Abbey of Thélème, the Fiche que vouldras. The most explicit link between Rabelais and Crowley lies in Crowley's appropriation of the phrase "do what thou wilt" as the foundational tenet of his Thelemic doctrine. In his seminal work, Liber al vel legis, or the Book of the Law, which Crowley claimed was dictated to him in Cairo in 1904, by a supernatural entity named Iowas, the phrase appears as "do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." This phrase is almost a direct echo of Rabelais' motto and demonstrates how deeply Crowley was influenced by the Abbey of Théléme's philosophy. Crowley's use of the motto was not just a superficial borrowing, because it became the cornerstone of Thelemic belief, encapsulating the idea that each individual has a unique, true will, a purpose or path that they must discover and follow to achieve spiritual fulfillment. Beyond the direct textual references, Crowley's writings and teachings reflect a broader alignment with the spirit of Rabelaisian thought. Like Rabelais, Crowley was a vehement critic of religious orthodoxy and societal constraints. He rejected the conventional morality and the rigid structures imposed by organized religions, advocating instead for a radical form of personal freedom and self-determination. Crowley often extolled the virtues of intellectual and spiritual independence, the pursuit of knowledge, and the exploration of human potential, all themes that are central to the utopian vision of the Abbey of Thélème. Crowley's critique of dogma and authority mirrors Rabelais' own satirical attacks on the Catholic Church and the oppressive institutions of his time. Both men were deeply skeptical of any system that sought to limit human freedom or to control the expression of individual will. In his work, Crowley promotes a vision of life where personal exploration and spiritual development are unhampered by traditional constraints, advocating for a world where people are encouraged to think for themselves and to pursue their passions fully and unapologetically. Furthermore, Crowley's conception of a new social order based on Thelemic principles bears a striking resemblance to an idealized community depicted in Rabelais' Gargantua. In Crowley's vision, a future society would be composed of individuals who are wholly committed to discovering and living according to their true will, free from the restrictive norms of conventional morality, societal expectations, and organized religions. This idea of a utopia in which human potential is celebrated and oppressive structures are dismantled clearly reflects the influence of Rabelais' thought on Crowley's philosophy. Crowley, like Rabelais, imagines a society where individuals live in harmony, not because they are bound by rules, but because they are guided by their own enlightened will and a genuine understanding of their place in the universe. And this is believed to be the best unconstrained way to achieve the best outcome for society at large. So it's not something that he believed would only achieve your own personal goals and your own personal freedom, but also it would be to the benefit of everybody. So through these parallels, we can see how Rabelais' subversive wit, his celebration of freedom, and his vision of a liberated society found a receptive and transformative outlet in Crowley's work. Crowley not only admired Rabelais, but also drew from his writings to construct a modern spiritual philosophy that continues to challenge and inspire. The legacy of Rabelais' thought thus lives on in the Principles of Thelema, where the call to do what thou wilt remains a potent symbol of the quest for individual freedom and spiritual awakening. So now let's talk about the differences and the reinterpretations. So while the influence of Rabelais' Abbey of Thélème on Aleister Crowley's Thelema is undeniable, there are significant differences in the context, purpose, and interpretation of their respective visions. Rabelais' depiction of the Abbey of Thélème is primarily a work of satirical fiction, intended to critique the social, religious, and political institutions of 16th century France. Through humor, irony, and fantastical elements, Rabelais attacks the hypocrisy and corruption of the church, the excesses of monastic life, and the rigid structures that stifle human freedom and creativity. His work is a Renaissance-era commentary on the power dynamic of his day, using the Abbey of Thélème as an imaginative vehicle to express humanist values and the potential for a more liberated society. In contrast, Crowley's Thelema is a fully realized spiritual doctrine developed in the early 20th century, intended to serve as a guide for individuals on a path of self-realization, spiritual enlightenment, and magical attainment. Crowley presents Thelema not as a fictional construct or satirical critique, but as a serious religious philosophy and practice. He framed Thelema as a universal spiritual law that governs all universe and all existence, offering a comprehensive framework for personal transformation, mystical experience, and the realization of one's divine potential. Rabelais' vision of the Abbey of Thélème is deeply rooted in the humanistic ideals of the Renaissance, as we mentioned, and emphasizes the value of education, reason, and individual autonomy, and the natural goodness of humanity. Rabelais celebrates the freedom to learn, explore, and enjoy life, reflecting the intellectual and cultural climate of his time, which was increasingly moving away from medieval scholasticism towards a rediscovery of classical antiquity and an emphasis on human potential. His abbey is a metaphor for a society where human beings, unburdened by oppressive dogmas, can develop their capacities in an environment of mutual respect, intellectual curiosity, and moral integrity. Whereas with Crowley, Crowley's Thelema shares some of these humanistic principles, such as the emphasis on individual autonomy and the potential for personal growth, but it is firmly situated within the context of 20th century occultism. Crowley draws upon a broad range of esoteric traditions, incorporating elements from ceremonial magic, Kabbalah, alchemy, Egyptian mythology, yogic practices, and Eastern mysticism. His reinterpretation of the Renaissance humanist ideals is shaped by his own mystical experiences, the rise of the modern occult movements, and the cultural currents of his time, which included a fascination with the occult, spiritualism, and the blending of Eastern and Western esoteric traditions. Now, one of the most significant reinterpretations Crowley makes in his expansion of the Thelemite motto, "Do what thou wilt," for Rabelais, this phrase embodies a call for personal freedom and a rejection of arbitrary external constraints, whether religious or societal. It is an expression of a utopian vision where individuals are free to follow their desires in a harmonious, enlightened community. Crowley, however, infuses the motto with a deeper spiritual and metaphysical significance. For him, do what thou wilt is not just about personal liberty in a social sense. It is a command to discover and enact one's true will, the unique divine purpose that each person is designed to fulfill. Crowley posits that aligning with one's true will is the key to spiritual enlightenment and a direct path to achieving one's highest potential and cosmic purpose. Crowley's Thelema also introduces several elements that are completely absent in Rabelais' work. These include the concept of the holy guardian angel, a spiritual entity that represents the individual's higher self or divine nature, which one must contact and unify with to fully realize their true will. Crowley also incorporates the practice of sexual magic, which he believed was a powerful means of spiritual and magical attainment. Additionally, Thelema embraces the idea of the divine nature of the self, suggesting that every individual is inherently divine and possesses within themselves the potential for godhood. These esoteric and mystical dimensions reflect Crowley's synthesis of Rabelaisian ideas with a wide array of occult and spiritual traditions and create a complex and multifaceted philosophy that goes far beyond the original Renaissance humanism. Despite these differences, the fundamental essence of Rabelais' utopian vision remains at the core of Crowley's Thelemic philosophy. Both envision a society where individuals are free to pursue their highest potential without the restraints imposed by dogma, tradition, or external authority. Crowley's Thelema can be seen as an adaptation and expansion of the central themes of the Abbey of Thélème, reimagining Rabelais' Renaissance ideals within a modern aesthetic context. By doing so, Crowley created a spiritual system that continues to challenge and inspire those on a quest for personal liberation, self-discovery, and spiritual realization, and demonstrate the enduring power of Rabelais' vision, also to transcend his own vision, because it was incorporated, of course, in a much wider system that is deeply spiritual and religious in nature. As we see in tracing the philosophical and aesthetic lineage from François Rabelais' Gargantua to Aleister Crowley's Thelemic doctrine, we have uncovered a deep and significant connection between these two seemingly disparate figures. The utopian vision of the Abbey of Thélème, with its focus on personal freedom, the inherent goodness of humanity, and the pursuit of knowledge, provided a foundation that would later be reimagined and transformed by Crowley into a spiritual system that continues to impact esoteric thought today. Rabelais' Abbey of Thélème, a fictional creation grounded in Renaissance humanism, offered a radical alternative to the rigid religious and social structures of the 16th century. His emphasis on the liberation of the individual from oppressive dogmas and his faith in the natural goodness and of reason and of human beings resonated with Crowley, who found in these ideas a precursor to his own philosophy of Thelema. The evidence of Rabelais' influence on Crowley is evident not only in the direct references to the French author in Crowley's writings, but also in the striking similarities between the Thelemite motto, do what thou wilt, and Crowley's central tenet, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. This adaptation of Rabelais' ideas within an occult framework allowed Crowley to create a spiritual doctrine that speaks to those seeking self-realization and a release from societal constraints. The enduring legacy of Gargantua in Thelemic thought testifies to the timeless appeal of Rabelais' humanistic ideals. So I hope that I've also encouraged you to read the book. It's also quite fun. So while there are clear differences between the satirical fiction of the Abbey of Thélème and the spiritual philosophy of Thelema, in their context, purposes, and specific interpretations, the core principles they share remain profoundly influential. Both Rabelais and Crowley championed the values of individual freedom, self-determination, and a belief in the innate potential of human beings when they are left free and unburdened. These principles have continued to inspire and guide those on a journey of personal and spiritual growth, which really suggests that Rabelais' vision was, even though it was a utopia, it has been quite influential and is still influential today. In conclusion, the transformative journey from Rabelais' literary utopia to Crowley's esoteric doctrine highlights the remarkable power of ideas to transcend time, genre, and cultural boundaries. By illuminating the profound connections between these two thinkers, we gain a deeper understanding of how the humanist ideals of the Renaissance have shaped modern aesthetic traditions. Rabelais' vision of a liberated society where individuals are free to explore their potential without the constraints of imposed dogmas finds new life in Crowley's philosophy, which reinterprets these values within the context of spiritual and magical practice. So this exploration hopefully highlights not just the lasting impact of Rabelais' thought, but also its adaptability, demonstrating how Renaissance humanism can inform and enrich modern spiritual philosophies. Crowley's reinterpretation of Rabelais' principles within the framework of Thelema offers a compelling examples of how ideas from different eras and contexts can converge to create new paths towards personal liberation and self-discovery. In this way, the connection between Rabelais and Crowley remains a vibrant testament to the enduring relevance of visionary thought in the ever-evolving quest for meaning and enlightenment. These are my references, my bibliography. And it's 2 slides, so it's long. And thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed it.